Browns insider Mary Kay is in serious trouble after lying on Shedeur Sanders. Dang, Mary Kay got Jamie Foxx, aka Willie Beeman, calling her out too. Know how she still have those credentials, but moving forward, Mary Kay is in serious trouble right now for lying on Shedeur Sanders. You even have Jamie Foxx calling her out. Yes, Jamie Foxx. I'm going to play this video clip and let you guys hear exactly what she was lying about as far as trying to defend Kevin Stefanski, and then I'm going to give you guys my thoughts.
What you are about to hear is something that genuinely has never happened before in the history of NFL media coverage. A credentialed insider with full access to one of the most watched franchises in the league got publicly called out, not by a rival reporter, not by a fan account with 100,000 followers, by Jamie Foxx, the man who played Willie Beeman in Any Given Sunday. And then, as if that was not enough, Coach Prime himself stepped in and publicly co-signed the call-out with a thank you that carried more weight than any press conference statement could. 2 words from Jamie Foxx: knock it off. 2 words that cut through months of spin, selective reporting, and a quarterback competition that the numbers were quietly exposing as something far less equal than the official story suggested. This is not just a Cleveland Browns story. This is not just a media criticism story. This is a story about what happens when the gap between what reporters are saying and what is actually happening on the football field becomes too wide for even Hollywood to ignore. Shedeur Sanders has been doubted, undercounted, and quietly managed out of a fair shot all offseason. And the machine that was supposed to cover it honestly helped sell the narrative instead. Gridiron Ground is going to lay out everything. Team Shedeur or Team Watson? One word. Drop it in the comments right now. Let's go.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
I don't think Shedeur had that kind of a high football acumen, because he does. But he was starting a little bit back further in the process of all the things that you have to do to go out there and play pro football, just in terms of the play calling and the sliding the protections and managing the motions and all that kind of stuff. He just had to get up to speed on that stuff, but he has just gone lightning quick at coming up that learning curve. And here's something to remember. We have now heard from a number of people. He is in that office every single day with Kevin Stefanski, going over tape and learning this pro game. And I think that has helped him tremendously. So for the narrative that's out there that Kevin Stefanski has tried to sabotage him and that he doesn't like him, no. The reason why Shedeur has learned as quickly as he has is because of all that extra time that Kevin Stefanski has put in with him.
There is a moment that should have stopped every NFL media analyst cold, made them put down their notes, and genuinely ask themselves what is happening here. Adam Schefter, the most connected, most buttoned up, most consequential insider in the entire NFL media landscape, was sitting in an ESPN studio doing military presses with 30-pound dumbbells. Not because of Patrick Mahomes, not because of Josh Allen, not because of a Super Bowl MVP or a first-round franchise cornerstone, because of Shedeur Sanders, a 23-year-old fifth-round pick from Colorado who has spent the better part of this entire offseason being told he needs to wait his turn, close a gap, and prove he belongs in a league that drafted him with one of the latest picks in the entire class. And yet the most powerful voice in NFL media was performing that player's workout routine on national television. Let that sit for a second. That does not happen by accident. That does not happen because a producer thought it would be mildly entertaining. That happens because Shedeur Sanders has become something the NFL does not quite know how to categorize yet, and the media, for all its attempts to manage the narrative around him, cannot stop following the gravity of his story even when it tries. The segment itself had real layers to it. They brought the actual dumbbells into the studio. They built the segment around Sanders' real training routine. Schefter played along with full awareness of the absurdity, joking about whether Todd Monken might dock his pay if he missed a rep, wondering out loud if he should be considered part of the 4-man quarterback competition himself. It was funny. It was entertaining. But underneath the humor was something that deserved more attention than it got. The most trusted voice in NFL journalism was spending his prime airtime centered entirely on a fifth-round pick. Not Watson, not Dylan Gabriel, not Joe Flacco, Shedeur. And that is not a coincidence. That is the media following the gravitational pull of the real story whether they intend to or not. Now think about what that signals to the rest of the league. When Schefter locks in on a player, front offices take notice. Coaches pay attention. Other players pay attention. And when he is literally performing that player's workout on live television, it sends a message louder than any headline or insider report ever could. This kid has arrived. The workout video that sparked the whole segment had already been spreading across social media before the ESPN moment. Shedeur in the gym, putting in serious work. Not a brand shoot, not a marketing moment, just a player grinding ahead of training camp. And that grind was compelling enough to make Adam Schefter pick up a dumbbell on national television. Meanwhile, Shedeur himself was handling all of this with a level of self-awareness that most veterans twice his age have never developed. He told reporters directly that he understood his name had become the algorithm, that everyone around him was a content creator, and that he could never be mad at someone making money off his story. That is not arrogance. That is a 23-year-old reading the room perfectly and choosing to move through it with calm instead of noise. And here at Gridiron Ground, we have been watching every piece of this story unfold from the beginning. If you are not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Because what is coming next in this script is where it really gets interesting. The Schefter moment was entertaining. What Kay Cabot did next was something else entirely. For anyone who has been tracking the Browns' quarterback situation since the start of the offseason, what Kay Cabot said, and then unsaid over the course of a few months, did not come as a shocking twist. It came as a confirmation of something a lot of people had already quietly suspected, that the narrative being pushed by certain members of the Cleveland media was never really about what was happening on the practice field. It was about protecting a conclusion that had already been reached before a single competitive rep was ever taken. Go back to where this started. At the beginning of the offseason, Kay was one of the loudest voices making the case that Deshaun Watson should be handed the starting job as quickly as possible. She wrote that the Browns should declare Watson QB1 immediately, let the first-team offense start building chemistry, and that there was simply no time to waste on a drawn-out competition. That was the line. Watson is the guy, Shedeur needs to wait, end of story. She also framed Shedeur's situation in a way that made the math feel impossible. She wrote that he had approximately 6 weeks to close the gap, that he had significant ground to make up, and that he would need to genuinely dazzle the coaching staff just to be considered a real factor in the competition. The framing was unmistakable and deliberate. Watson was the presumed starter coming in.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Shedeur was the long shot who needed to perform a miracle just to earn a conversation. And then something happened that the narrative was not prepared for. Shedeur Sanders actually started playing football. He showed up to OTAs and minicamp and proceeded to make measurable, documented, undeniable progress. Reports from The Athletic noted that he had made significant strides in his footwork and his ability to cycle through progressions quickly. His quarterback coach specifically noted measurable improvement in how Shedeur was aligning his feet to his potential targets and passing lanes. That is technical, precise praise. That is not a coach tossing a compliment to manage a young player's confidence. That is a coach acknowledging real development happening at a faster rate than anticipated. Watson, on the other hand, was inconsistent. He flashed the downfield confidence that made him elite in Houston, but he could not maintain it from practice to practice. He was making decisions that a 9-year veteran simply should not be making in a controlled practice environment, let alone in a competitive quarterback room where a young player was quietly outperforming him day after day. So what happened to the narrative that Watson was the obvious choice and Shedeur needed to close a massive gap? It started cracking. By the end of minicamp, Mary Kay was describing Shedeur as someone who had come on really strong, who had applied consistent pressure on the competition, and who had risen to the occasion when it mattered. She said, and these were her words, that if he kept performing this way in training camp, the decision was going to become very, very difficult for Todd Monken. Let's be direct about what that is. That is a complete reversal from someone who was calling for Watson to be handed the job before camp even opened. It is not a thoughtful evolution of opinion built on careful observation over time. It is a reporter chasing a reality on the ground after spending months trying to shape a narrative that the evidence refused to support. And the frustrating part is not the reversal itself. People adjust their positions. Reporters update their takes. That is a normal part of covering a story as it develops. The frustrating part is the complete absence of accountability for how far off the original framing was, and how quickly the tone shifted the moment the evidence became too obvious to keep ignoring. The media does not lead this story. It follows it. And when it follows it badly enough for long enough, eventually someone with a bigger platform notices. In this case, that someone was not another reporter or a rival analyst. That someone was Willie Beeman. There are moments in sports media where a story breaks completely out of its lane and lands somewhere nobody could have predicted. This was absolutely one of those moments. And the fact that it unfolded the way it did, with these specific people involved, made it impossible for anyone to look away regardless of whether they had been following the Browns closely or not. A clip of Mary Kay Cabot began circulating across social media platforms. In the clip, she was defending Kevin Stefanski's handling of Shedeur Sanders with full confidence. She framed the coaching staff's relationship with the young quarterback as entirely supportive, hands-on, and positive from the very beginning of the offseason. She talked about how Shedeur had been in Stefanski's office every single day, going over tape, learning the pro game, absorbing the system. And she specifically pushed back against any narrative suggesting Stefanski had tried to sabotage Shedeur or had not genuinely supported his development. She presented it as though the coaching staff and the quarterback were operating in a relationship built on trust and mutual investment. And then Jamie Foxx saw the clip. For anyone who knows the film Any Given Sunday, Jamie Foxx played Willie Beeman, one of the most culturally iconic fictional quarterbacks in football history. He is not a celebrity who casually wanders into sports discourse. He understands the game. He understands the politics woven into the game, and he clearly understands what it looks like when a young quarterback is being handled versus actually being supported. Two very different things that can look similar from the outside when the reporting only tells you one version. His response to the clip was 2 words: knock it off. No lengthy rebuttal, no detailed statistical breakdown, no paragraph-long thread picking apart her argument point by point. Just 2 words that carried the weight of everything fans, independent media, and observers had been saying for months in comment sections, on podcasts, and on YouTube channels exactly like this one. 2 words that cut cleanly through months of carefully managed messaging and landed directly on the truth. And then Coach Prime responded. Deshaun Sanders, Shedeur's father, one of the greatest to ever play the game of football, saw what Jamie Foxx posted and responded with a public thank you. Now if you know Deshaun, and most football fans do, you know that man does not spend his energy or his public platform on things that do not carry real weight. When he co-signs something publicly, it is not courtesy. It is not a casual social media interaction. That thank you was Deshaun Sanders telling the entire football world that Jamie Foxx was right, that the sentiment was accurate, and that the people who had been paying attention already knew it. The reaction spread fast and it spread wide. Social media picked it up immediately across multiple platforms. The consensus was remarkably consistent. This was not a pylon. This was not internet noise generated by a fan base looking for something to be angry about. This was 2 high-profile, credible, culturally significant people looking at the same footage independently and arriving at the exact same conclusion. And that conclusion was that the reporting around Shedeur Sanders and Kevin Stefanski's relationship was not telling the complete story. Here is what makes the criticism sting beyond just the public embarrassment of being called out. The issue was not that Mary Kay fabricated quotes or invented facts. The issue was selection. She chose which parts of the story to tell and which parts to leave out. She acknowledged Shedeur's learning curve while painting Stefanski as the dedicated mentor who personally guided him through every step of his development, without ever seriously addressing the moments throughout the offseason that gave fans legitimate reasons to question whether the support being described publicly was matching the reality in Berea. That is selective reporting. And selective reporting, sustained consistently over months, becomes its own form of shaping a narrative without ever technically lying. That is the part fans, independent media, and apparently Hollywood legends are no longer willing to let pass without naming it. And right here on Gridiron Ground, we have been calling it out since day one. If you are not subscribed yet, tap that button right now because this story is only getting bigger and we are going to be here for every chapter of it.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
To understand why the Jamie Foxx moment landed with the force that it did, you have to go back to the actual beginning of this offseason. Because the full picture of what Shedeur Sanders was actually navigating during this quarterback competition is something that deserves to be laid out clearly, without the organizational spin, and without the protective framing that shaped how most of it got covered. Kevin Stefanski and the Browns front office told the public this was going to be a legitimate four-way quarterback competition. Shedeur Sanders, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Joe Flacco, and Deshaun Watson, all competing on an equal playing field, all given a genuine opportunity to make their case. May the best man win. That was the official line. That is what got reported across outlets. That is what got repeated on television panels and in beat reporter columns. And Mary Kay's coverage helped reinforce that framing consistently and without much skepticism throughout the process. Except it was never actually a four-way competition. Not even close. Anyone paying real attention to the practice reports emerging from Berea knew from early on that the reps were not being distributed equally. Watson was consistently receiving the majority of work with the first-team offense. Shedeur was rotating in with measurably fewer opportunities. Less live action with the starting unit. Less time to build the kind of rhythm and chemistry with top receivers that translates directly into performance when game conditions arrive. Think about what that actually means when you apply it to a supposed open competition. If you are evaluating 4 quarterbacks, but one of them is consistently getting fewer reps, less time with the starters, and fewer opportunities to demonstrate what he can do against a first-team defense in something resembling real game conditions, you are not running a fair evaluation. You are staging a performance with a predetermined result attached to it, and calling it a competition because that framing is significantly easier to sell to a fan base than admitting the decision was already made before the first snap was ever taken. And here is the detail that should genuinely bother Browns fans when they sit with it. Shedeur's numbers during that competition were better than the numbers produced by all 3 of the quarterbacks he was supposedly being evaluated alongside. Better efficiency, better decision-making, better overall production in the opportunities he was given, and he produced those results with fewer reps, less time with the starting unit, and a lighter overall workload than Watson, Gabriel, and Flacco were each receiving throughout the spring. That is not a quarterback who needs to close a gap. That is a quarterback who was already ahead and was being quietly managed to prevent the competition from officially reflecting what it actually was on the field. The decision to frame this as a legitimate 4-man battle did real and specific damage to Shedeur's public standing heading into the season. It gave analysts and commentators the language to suggest he had not truly earned anything, that the situation was still open and unresolved, when the evidence available to anyone watching closely said the opposite. It gave organizational cover to a coaching staff that, according to multiple independent observers who had been tracking practice footage and reports carefully, was not treating every competitor in that room with genuinely equal opportunity. And the reporters who had the access, the credentials, the platform, and frankly, the professional obligation to hold the organization accountable for running an unequal competition instead helped reinforce the official framing. They wrote about the battle as though it were real and balanced. They wrote about Watson as though his experience alone made the presumption of his starting role reasonable and justified. They wrote about Shedeur as though he was the one carrying an extra burden of proof, when in reality the numbers were pointing clearly and consistently in the opposite direction. When you lay all of that out in sequence, the Jamie Foxx moment transforms. It stops being a celebrity curiosity and starts looking exactly like what it was: accountability arriving from a direction nobody in the Cleveland media establishment saw coming. At some point, all the media criticism and all the credentialing debates and all the social media reactions from actors and Hall of Fame corners have to give way to the thing that actually matters: what the numbers say. Because the numbers in this situation tell a story that is significantly, almost uncomfortably different from the one that was being sold to the public throughout the entire offseason. Start with last season. Shedeur Sanders started 7 games as a rookie coming off the bench into one of the most difficult situations a young quarterback can be placed in. He was operating behind an offensive line that was not built to protect a developing passer. He was without the reliable receiving weapons that give a young quarterback the margin for error he needs, while his decision-making is still sharpening. And he was doing all of this without the consistent starter-level reps in practice that build the mechanical fluency required to bring down turnover numbers over time. His final line was 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. On the surface, to someone reading that without context, those numbers look modest. A lot of analysts used exactly those numbers to build the case that Watson should be the guy and that Shedeur needed more time on the bench before being handed real responsibility. But here is what those analysts consistently and deliberately left out of the conversation. Those numbers were produced under conditions that no analyst would accept as a fair baseline for evaluating a young quarterback's ceiling. The protection was inadequate. The weapons were limited. The opportunity was compressed. And despite all of that, he showed flashes of pocket presence and arm talent that the people actually watching the film, not the people reading the box score, were already taking seriously. Now move forward to the offseason competition. The Athletic reported that Sanders made significant and measurable strides in his footwork and his ability to cycle through progressions efficiently during OTAs and minicamp. His quarterback coach offered specific, technical praise about how Shedeur had improved the alignment of his feet to his targets and passing lanes. That is not generic encouragement. Coaching staffs managing competitive quarterback rooms do not casually offer that level of specific technical praise unless the development is genuinely real and genuinely notable. And in that same competition, where he was given fewer first-team reps than Watson, fewer opportunities to build rhythm with the starting receivers, and less live action to demonstrate what he was capable of, Shedeur still posted better efficiency numbers, better decision-making metrics, and better overall production than every other quarterback competing for that job.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Watson, for all his experience, for all his history as one of the most gifted quarterbacks of his generation during his peak years in Houston, was inconsistent in ways that a 9-year veteran simply cannot explain away as rust. He occasionally threw with real confidence downfield, but he was making decisions and showing volatility from practice to practice that you do not expect from a player carrying a fully guaranteed $230 million contract backed by 3 first-round picks. The contrast between what Watson's performance suggested and what the media narrative around him implied was significant. And the contrast between what Shedeur was producing under harder conditions with less support, and how that production was being described in print was equally significant, just in the opposite direction. So when Mary Kay was writing that Watson should be declared starter immediately with no time to waste, the question that never got asked loudly or persistently enough was compared to what exactly? Because the data did not support the conclusion. The performance on the field did not support the conclusion. The only thing supporting it was a predetermined narrative that the numbers were quietly and steadily dismantling every single day of that competition. The field was telling one story. Certain reporters were telling another. And the gap between those two stories is exactly why Jamie Foxx only needed 2 words. There is a conversation happening around Shedeur Sanders that stretches well beyond anything happening in Cleveland. Beyond the quarterback competition, beyond Mary Kay's credibility, beyond the Jamie Foxx moment. It is a conversation about the standards the NFL media ecosystem applies to different players depending on factors that have nothing to do with what happens between the white lines. And if you have been watching this story closely from the beginning, you already know exactly what those factors are even if you have not seen them named directly. Start with the jersey photo shoot. Shedeur was at the Sanders compound. He laid out every jersey he had worn across his entire career, from high school all the way through to his NFL debut with the Browns. It was a personal moment, a celebration of a personal journey. He posted it online, and it went viral almost immediately. And almost as quickly as it spread, certain voices in the NFL media began using it as evidence of a character issue. Rex Ryan was among the loudest critics. He said Shedeur needed more we than me. He framed the photo shoot as a sign of selfishness, as proof that the young quarterback was more invested in his personal brand than in being a genuine team player and earning the respect of his locker room. LaShawn McCoy, who actually played for Rex Ryan in Buffalo and knows precisely what Rex's standards looked like from inside that locker room, shut the criticism down without hesitation. His point was direct and accurate. Shedeur was at his own home, on his own personal time, honoring his own journey. This was not a team event. This was not a distraction pulled from a practice facility or a meeting room. This was a person taking a private moment to acknowledge where he had been and how far he had traveled to get here. And then the panel discussing it made a point that deserves to be said plainly and without softening. When Aaron Rodgers does something unconventional or eccentric, it gets labeled as personality. It gets framed as the complexity of a unique competitive mind. When Ben Roethlisberger carried strong opinions and a commanding presence throughout his career, that got called leadership. When Patrick Mahomes builds his public image into something larger than football, does commercials, cultivates a brand, and becomes one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet, it gets called admirable. It gets celebrated as the mark of a true franchise player. When Shedeur Sanders posts a jersey photo at his own home on his own time, it gets called selfish. That is a double standard. It is not subtle. It is not new. But it is important to name it directly and clearly because it shapes which stories get told, which narratives get amplified, and whose struggles get reframed as character flaws, while someone else's character flaws get repackaged as competitive fire or veteran complexity. The same pattern runs directly through how the quarterback competition itself got covered. Watson's inconsistency got framed as rust. As a gifted player working his way back from difficult circumstances, who deserved patience and the benefit of the doubt from an organization and a fan base, Shedeur's development, which by every measurable indicator was moving faster and more meaningfully than Watson's during that same period, got framed as a gap still requiring closure. As a young player with something left to prove before earning real consideration, the evidence pointed in one direction, the narrative pointed in another. And the double standard embedded in how those two quarterbacks were described, evaluated, and written about over the course of several months tells you a great deal about why two credible, high-profile voices publicly said enough was enough. When the gap between the reporting and the reality becomes wide enough for long enough, eventually people with platforms and something real to say stop staying quiet about it. To understand why all of this matters beyond media drama and social media reactions, you have to look at the actual football reality the Cleveland Browns are sitting inside right now. Because the decisions being made in that building this summer are going to shape the franchise for the better part of the next decade. And the stakes attached to those decisions are not abstract. They are measured in wins, losses, draft capital, and the long-term direction of an organization that has been searching for its answer at quarterback for longer than most of its current fan base wants to admit. Deshaun Watson is 31 years old. He has not played a full, healthy season in years. He is carrying the full weight of the most scrutinized contract in modern NFL history, fully guaranteed at $230 million, backed by a trade that cost Cleveland 3 first-round picks and fundamentally altered the franchise's competitive timeline. The expectations attached to that deal when it was made were enormous. The reality that has followed has been something very different from what was promised. At his genuine peak in Houston, Watson was one of the most electric, gifted quarterbacks in the entire league. The arm talent, the mobility, the football IQ, the competitive edge, all of it was real and it was special. But that version of Watson has not appeared in Cleveland in a consistent or sustainable way. What showed up in practice this offseason was a quarterback who occasionally flashed the former brilliance that made him a franchise-altering talent, but who could not maintain it from rep to rep or drive to drive in a controlled spring practice environment. Volatile, unpredictable, making decisions in practice that a 9-year starter should not be making against a competition that includes a 23-year-old 5th-round pick. That is not the profile of a player who has automatically earned a starting role over a competitor who is outperforming him by measurable standards. And then there is Shedeur Sanders, moving in exactly the opposite direction at exactly the right moment. Every credible report coming out of Berea this offseason pointed toward a quarterback improving measurably, absorbing coaching at an accelerated rate, and building real chemistry with the offensive weapons developing alongside him. Wide receivers like Denzel Boston and Casey Conception are growing with him. Harold Fannin Jr. at tight end brings a legitimate mismatch element to the offense. Quinshon Judkins in the backfield gives the offense a genuine run game to work off of. The offensive line is in a meaningfully better position than it was when Shedeur was thrown into games last season without adequate time to prepare or adequate protection to operate within. And sitting above all of it is Todd Monken, a head coach who has demonstrated real ability to build offenses that put young quarterbacks in positions to make plays, grow through mistakes, and develop into the kind of players that carry franchises. The contrast between what Watson brings to this situation and what Shedeur brings is not particularly close when you evaluate trajectory instead of reputation. Watson's trajectory is declining. His best football by almost every statistical and physical measure is behind him. Shedeur's trajectory is rising sharply, and his best football is almost certainly still years ahead of him. Reports have also surfaced suggesting the Browns may be looking to move Dillon Gabriel before the season gets underway, with speculation pointing to him as the likely odd man out as the roster narrows. That detail alone signals something meaningful. The organization is beginning to think more concretely about what the quarterback room actually looks like heading into a real season. And here at Gridiron Ground, we have been tracking every thread of this story from day one. If you are not subscribed, do it right now. Because when this decision gets made officially, you want to already be here. Training camp is where all of it gets settled. Everything that has happened this offseason has been building toward one specific moment. Not a press conference, not an insider report, not a carefully worded organizational statement about competition and evaluation. Training camp. Pads on, live pass rush, real contact, game speed. No more controlled spring settings where the variables can be managed and the results can be interpreted in whatever direction serves the narrative best. The competition moves into conditions where the truth is significantly harder to hide and significantly harder to spin after the fact. Todd Monken came into this offseason with a stated plan. He said publicly that he intended to name a starter before training camp began. He set that expectation clearly. He let it sit in the public record as the timeline the competition was supposed to follow. And then something happened that his plan apparently did not fully account for. Shedeur Sanders closed the gap faster and more convincingly than the coaching staff had anticipated. So instead of a clean, comfortable decision that confirmed the presumed outcome and let the organization move forward without uncomfortable questions, Monken is now carrying the competition into camp. He has said publicly that he plans to continue alternating Watson and Shedeur with reps throughout the early portion of camp, maintaining the same rotation that played out across the spring. But he also said something that carries more weight than the rotation details themselves. He said that ultimately he will play whoever gives the offense the best chance to score points, and that he will not know the answer to that question definitively until the competition moves into something resembling real full-contact game conditions. That is a significant statement. It means the job is genuinely available. It means that $230 million and 3 first-round picks do not automatically secure a starting role when a competitor is outperforming you by measurable standards under harder conditions. It means that what happens on the practice field over the next several weeks is going to carry real weight in a real decision that affects the franchise's immediate future. And that reality should terrify everyone who has been banking on Watson and energize everyone who has been watching Shedeur's trajectory this offseason with clear eyes. Because the conditions of training camp favor exactly the kind of quarterback Shedeur has been becoming. The live pass rush, the mental pressure of performing when something concrete is on the line, the heat of genuine competition without the safety net of a controlled environment. These are the conditions that expose inconsistency fast and reward the quarterbacks who are genuinely prepared and mentally locked in. Watson has struggled under exactly those conditions. Shedeur has been trending toward handling them better with every passing week of the offseason. There is also the mental makeup element that cannot be overlooked or undervalued. Shedeur has been doubted at every single level of his career. He was doubted in college until the results became impossible to deny. He was doubted through the entire draft process and fell all the way to the 5th round despite producing numbers in college that any other quarterback in that class would have been celebrated for rather than quietly dismissed. He has been doubted in Cleveland. He has been told to wait, to close a gap, to prove something extra that the numbers never actually required him to prove. And every single time, he has responded by performing, improving, and forcing the conversation to shift in his direction, whether the people controlling the narrative wanted it to move or not. That is not something you develop through extra film sessions or better coaching. That comes from a player who knows exactly who he is, knows what he is capable of, and refuses to let anyone else place a ceiling on his career. The media is finally catching up to what the tape and the numbers have been saying for months. Training camp is about to make that case louder than any reporter ever could. Here is where everything lands when you pull it all together. A credentialed veteran reporter got publicly called out by Jamie Foxx and Coach Prime for protecting a narrative that the numbers on the field were consistently disproving. The four-way quarterback competition that dominated off-season coverage was never the equal, fair evaluation it was presented as. Shedeur Sanders outperformed every quarterback in that room despite receiving fewer reps, less first-team opportunity, and less organizational support than the player who was simultaneously being framed as the obvious presumptive starter. Adam Schefter did a workout segment on national television for a 5th-round pick. Think about what that communicates. The media chases narratives. It protects organizations when it serves them to do so. It applies double standards so consistently and so casually that most people stopped noticing years ago. But Shedeur Sanders has become the kind of player who makes those double standards visible because the gap between what the performance shows and what certain reporters say keeps growing too wide to ignore without saying something. Training camp is going to settle this. Not the articles, not the insider columns, not the carefully managed competition updates designed to protect every party involved. The field is going to decide it. And here at Gridiron Ground, we are going to bring you every chapter of this story without spin, without an agenda, and without protecting anyone's narrative at the expense of what is actually happening. Drop your answer in the comments right now. Team Shedeur or Team Watson? One word. And if you are not subscribed to Gridiron Ground yet, now is the time. When this thing breaks, you want to already be here.